Hello, my name is Emma Tobias, and I'm still hungover from the midterms yesterday. And I wanted to make a video because I haven't made a video in a couple weeks. I've been traveling a lot, and I've been exhausted by the midterms, which, you know, could have gone better, but there was a lot of good things that happened, so I'm gonna look at it positive and realistically at the same time. Okay, so I am going to talk about a bunch of books that I've read recently. I'm calling this my fall wrap-up, even though the fall isn't over. I shouldn't say only, I read about 8 books in the last couple months, which is pretty good for me. I am not a fast reader anymore. I have a problem with, like, attention span with reading, so I'm happy with how I did. I read most of these books, I think, read one book a week, which is pretty good. Okay, so the first book that I want to talk about is The Favorite Sister by Jessica Knoll. I read this through the Libby app for Overdrive. Basically, I got an ebook from my library, and it is a thriller about basically a feminist reality show, and you find out at the beginning of the book that one of the women on this reality show has been murdered, and then it goes back through time and explains how and why that occurred. This is quite the interesting book. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. I think in some ways it is a really interesting concept. I like books that explore like reality shows. I think that's really interesting. I'm fascinated by how reality shows work and how they play with people's minds, and I think that this book did a really good job of it. But as Emma from Drinking by My Shelf pointed out, it is quite controversial. All I'm going to say is that this book has quite a few content warnings. There's definitely some, I would say, content warnings for sexual assault, for queer phobia to a big extent, and violence, and just a lot of horrible things happen in this book. I think Jessica Knoll was trying to write a feminist novel about how feminism is quite performative for a lot of people, and I think that she did an okay job of doing that, but I think the means in which she did it through the characters was ill-advised and really was beside the point, and wasn't unpacked enough. So there were just big problems that happened that were never really unpacked. They were kind of unpacked, but I wish she'd done a better job. So it was fine. It's not my favorite book. I think I gave it like 2 to 3 stars. The writing was good. I enjoyed the way it was written. The next book I'm going to talk about was an audiobook that I pre-ordered, and that's The Greatest Love Story Ever Told by Megan Mullally and Nick Offerman. These two are a married couple, a quite famous married couple. They've been married for 18 years, and this book is basically conversations they had while in bed. It's a very loose book. It's kind of strung together through subjects that they want to talk about, so like their relationship, how they met, their careers, stuff like that. I really enjoyed the audiobook. It felt really natural and didn't even feel like they were reading. It felt like they were just having a conversation. They're a very cute couple. They seem very healthy. I enjoyed hearing about their relationships. There were a lot of couple goal moments. I like their back and forth. They're very flirtatious. It was a super sweet book. For me, it was a little long. It sort of dragged in the last couple hours. I don't think they really necessarily should have been there. It could have been shorter, and I think the print book probably would have read faster, but the audiobook just went a little slower. I did not really enjoy the aside chapters where one of them would talk by themselves or have a chapter by themselves. I thought those were kind of boring, and I generally enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. If you don't like them, you're probably not going to like this book, but I think overall I quite liked it. Oh, one of the things I thought was really interesting was how they explore how their careers are quite similar, but how their gender has really changed, how their careers have come about or meant something in pop culture, so I thought that was super interesting. Next, I listened to What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera through the Libby app again, and I listened to it in an audiobook. I would definitely recommend this audiobook. It was quite good. This is, if you haven't heard of it, it's quite famous now. It is a YA romance contemporary romance about two young men, teenage boys in New York City, who meet in a very cute way and end up falling in love and their relationship. This was super sweet. I felt like Arthur and Ben were both incredibly I can't talk. They were very well put together characters. I liked their perspectives. They were different and complementary at the same time. I thought it was sweet. I thought that the side characters were really realistic. I enjoyed how Becky Albatali and Adam Silvera talk about the city. Obviously it has rep for a queer romance. In general, I really liked it. I thought that the relationship problems they had were realistic. I liked the way the book ended, which was nice. I just enjoyed it. It was really sweet. I will say that I think that although I really did like the audiobook, I thought the narrator for Arthur was better than the narrator for Ben, and so it made me gravitate more towards the Arthur chapters, which I think if I had read it print, I would have liked both of the chapters equally. The next book I'm going to talk about is We're Going to Need More Wine by Gabrielle Union. Gabrielle Union is a pretty famous Black actress. Her roles range from Bring It On to 10 Things I Hate About You to her roles in Tyler Perry films. She's quite a famous actress. I quite like her. I follow her on social media and I really enjoy reading what she has to say. This book is a memoir. There's content warnings in this I'm so tired, in this book for rape and violence and cheating and toxic relationships. She gets into a lot of really serious stuff and she's incredibly honest. I love the fact that she owns up to the things she's done and she's learned from them. She also unpacks a lot about and talks a lot about being a Black woman in Hollywood, being a Black woman in America. I really appreciated this book. It's a very quick audiobook. I listened to an audiobook, which I would recommend. It's on the Libby app on Overdrive, and I really, really enjoyed it. I learned a lot from it and appreciated it immensely. The next book that I read was The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. This is a super fun urban fantasy book about a library, the secret library, and secret library agents who go to these different alternate worlds and universes, and they go out and alternate realities, and they go out and have to find these books. It's like a mystery mixed with sci-fi, mixed with fantasy. It's super fun. I really enjoyed the book. I really like the main character. She, to me, so far, although she hasn't outwardly said it, she reads as, like, potentially bi, which I think is cool. I haven't read more in the series, but that's kind of what I was picking up. It's not set on page, but I just kind of got the vibe that she could be bi. And I really enjoyed her a lot, and I enjoyed the story. It's kind of gets a little clunky sometimes with the plot and not explaining the world super well. It's a little bit clunky. I think it would be easier if you did read a lot of fantasy, but for me, and Emma from Drinking My Shelf, who I talk about all the time, pointed out in her video that she did, if you don't, like, she doesn't read a lot of fantasy. I don't read a ton of fantasy all the time, so it just was a little harder to get through, but I really enjoyed it. Next we have Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I read this last week, also through the Overdrive app, which is literally my favorite. Strange the Dreamer is an immensely popular YA book and a duology, and I won't get into it because I feel like everyone knows what it's about, but I really liked it. As I said previously, I don't read a ton of fantasy, especially like high or like hard fantasy like this. Like, this is not set, you know, in a world that we know. So I tend not to gravitate towards that. I read The Daughter of Smoke and Bone, the first two books, and like it was easier for me to read that because half of it was set in Prague and on Earth. I enjoyed this. The writing is beautiful because Laini Taylor can write beautifully. I enjoyed how fleshed out the world was. I really like the characters. I like how soft the two main characters are. They're very soft people. I like the way that their relationship develops. I really enjoyed it. It's never gonna, for me, be a 5-star book because just fantasy is not something that I'm always like 100, like fantasy like this, like hard fantasy. I don't know if it's not high fantasy, but like fantasy like this isn't always going to be like necessarily a 5-star read for me because it's just harder for me to get through it. Which I know that doesn't mean it shouldn't be 5 stars, but that's just kind of the way my brain works. But I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to read the second book because I'm curious to see what happens. It has kind of a bummer ending, so. And then finally, a book that is probably going to be on my favorites of this year list. It's somewhere here. I don't know where it is. I just bought it like a while ago. Not a while ago, like a few days ago when I was in Michigan visiting my brother. I went to a Target and I bought this book, and that is One Day in December by J.C. Silver. This is a contemporary romance. It's not a romance book, but it's kind of in the vein of like Sophie Kinsella. Basically, it's set in London, and it's about a girl, she's on, her name's Lori, she's on a bus, and it's like near Christmas, and she locks eyes with this guy on sitting on a bus stop, and they kind of have this moment of connection, and then her bus driver drives away, and she's like really bummed out, and spends the next year trying to find him, like jokingly, but also kind of serious, and then the very next year, her best friend in the entire world introduces her to her boyfriend, and her boyfriend is the guy from the bus stop. And then what happens is a 9-year friendship between them, and this crazy sort of life that they end up going through. I love a slow burn romance. It's one of my favorite tropes, and this does this very well. I so enjoyed it. I read it in one sitting. I was in a car ride for 15 hours, so that helped. But it made me really happy. I love books like this. I love books that feel like I'm watching a movie, and that's what it felt like. I loved Lori. I thought she was such a good character. I like Jack, he's the male guy character, a lot. He's very flawed and does some kind of crappy things, but I enjoyed his character and his character development. I just thought it was so sweet, and I loved it a lot. So, that is one of my favorites this year, probably, is going to be One Day in December by J.C. Silver. So those are the books that I have read recently. Let me know what you guys think. I would love to know. Have a wonderful day. Bye.